Well, Razorback fans, it's game day eve against the Alabama Crimson Tide. It's do or die this weekend. So let's go ahead and talk about some of our predictions for Arkansas and Alabama here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Nabors. I am also the host of Out of Bounds. You can catch every weekday afternoon from 1 to 4 on 103.7 The Buzz and 103.7thebuzz.com. Today's episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Sign up on UnderdogFantasy.com with promo code Locked On to get your first deposit doubled up to $100. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Friday. We finally made it. I know that there's a lot of excitement and tension at the same time in the air when people are getting to this point. Also, it's like beautiful fall feeling weather now. I just walked my dog Rowdy outside here in Little Rock, and I think it was like 59 degrees, a little crisp in the air. Maybe shouldn't have worn shorts, but it's beautiful outside, and it's going to be a beautiful weekend. And I think that's one of the best things about football season is not only actual football itself, but when you start turning the page towards that better weather, it really stands out, and it really is a great thing. So it's going to be so fun to be there in Fayetteville. But since it's Friday, we like to do a bunch of predictions and kind of do what we want to dive into as far as what we're going to talk about, and who's going to look good, who's going to need work, who's going to look bad, what's it going to all be, and it's kind of like a little bit of a primer, if you will, heading into this game. And honestly, I'm kind of going to just go through what I think offensively Arkansas is going to do and maybe what they don't do. Same thing with defense in the next segment, and kind of give my final prediction. So maybe a little bit of a shorter podcast, but listen, we've been talking about Alabama all week long. It's time for us to just get the game going and feel really good about it. But we'll start with the offensive side of the ball and get to the predictions here, because I think that this is the thing that I still have the most faith in when it comes to Arkansas's football team. I think the offense for Arkansas still is as good as any offense in the SEC. I still don't believe there is a weakness on this offense. I still believe that you have a phenomenal quarterback in KJ Jefferson. You got phenomenal running backs, like multiple phenomenal running backs. You got solid, really good wide receivers. You got a fantastic offensive line. And even your tight end with Trey Knox has been solid. So there's not a weakness on this offense. The problem with the offense, and this is what people kept bringing up to me and saying, or I got in discussions with people. I think it was even on my radio show. They're like, I don't, this offense needs to do this. This offense needs to do that. This offense has this problem. You know what the offense's problem is? Mistakes. That's the offense's problem. It's not the running game. It's not the passing game. It's not play calling. It's not any of these things. I'm not saying those things are all perfect, because nothing is. When you talk about the glaring issue with the offense's glaring issue is mistakes. That's it. And if this team and this offense plays mistake-free football, not having bad penalties, not having bad tackles for loss, not having turnovers, picks, fumbles, whatever it is, as long as they don't do that and they play mistake-free, they're as good as any offense in the country. So I don't buy into that thing about the offense. And honestly, in this game against Alabama, it's the offense is what's going to get you the victory. The offense is going to be the difference in this game. And we'll talk about the defense, what we think is going to happen. But if you don't score against Alabama, you will not win. It's as simple as that. And we know that Arkansas last year scored 35 points against Alabama. But the year before that, they scored like 3. It's like 52-3, I think, was the final score, something like that. And the year before that, you didn't score because it was Chad Morris's, whole stuff. He was not very good. Brett Bielema and his nightmares that Arkansas had up against Alabama. You have to score points. And last year you did. This year you can too. But the key to all of this, as we know with Arkansas's offense, just in general, no matter what, no matter who they're going up against, it's going to come down to can they run the ball effectively. Because if you look at the stats and look at the numbers for Alabama, their defense is still very much elite. They're only giving up 7 points a game and only 200 total offensive yards per game. Now, granted, Arkansas is going to have the best offense that Alabama has faced this year. So at least there's that you can kind of hold your hat on. But the thing is that Alabama only allows 138 passing yards and 62 rushing yards. 62 rushing yards a game. So that's not exactly, again, a recipe for success. But here's the thing. You got Rocket Sanders, who has over 500 yards rushing this year. And, he's a guy that has been really, really good to count on. Dominic Johnson, same thing. Dominion, I think they're going to get him a lot more carries. And, of course, KJ. You got big-bodied dudes because you're going to need them going up against a big-bodied Alabama defense. And if you can run the ball effectively, and when I say effectively, I'm talking about if you can rush in this game for over 200 yards against Alabama, which I know is a lot considering they're only giving up 62. But if you can rush against Alabama for over 200 yards, and you don't even really need to pass. I mean, it'd be great if you could pass for over 200 yards, but you can just get to like 150, between 150 and 200. You're talking about nearly 400 yards of offense, which would be double what Alabama has. I think as long as you're effectively doing that, and of course, with those offensive numbers, putting points on the board, scoring touchdowns, getting field goals, not blowing opportunities. If you do those types of things, I don't think there's any reason why you can't be in this game at least and possibly win. But the offense has to do that. That's the problem. It's the good thing, but it's also the bad thing. The good thing is your strength is your offense. The bad thing is that if your offense doesn't do anything in this game, or if Alabama does a good job of shutting you down, it's curtains. But I like last year, for instance, the way Kendall Briles called the game against Alabama. I mean, Arkansas scored 35 points. I mean, and there were big plays that happened. You remember the Traylon Burks where he caught it and just outran everybody. The Warren Thompson play, throw a deep ball, the fake field goal play, like all of those things. I love the way it was called. And honestly, you're going to have those types of things happen offensively for those big plays to open up the rushing attack. Now, I think now we talked about, how in Arkansas can they, will they, should they, all that stuff. Here's what they actually will do, in my opinion. I believe Arkansas will be able to run the ball somewhat, but I don't think that they're going to be able to run the ball as effectively as they have this year, and they're going to have to rely on KJ's arm. KJ's got some able-bodied receivers, but here's the thing that Arkansas is going to have to do when they have to rely on the passing game, because it's going to happen. KJ has to be smart. He has to make smart decisions. He has to get the ball to the open man. He cannot have underthrows. He's going to have to basically, anytime the opportunity comes with passing, hit the wide receivers, hit the guys right there in the hands and let them make the plays. I want to see more screens too. I think that that can be something that really helps out the pressure and gets things going for Arkansas too. But I just feel like they're going to be held in check for the most part. I still like Arkansas to do some things offensively, but I just feel like for offense, like yardage, scoring, whatever it is, they're going to have to play their best game, their A game. And I think they're going to have to at least rely on their passing game a lot more than what they have so far this year. This episode is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy, the easiest place to spice up college football season. And I'm telling you, I actually enjoy using this app. It's really fun when fantasy is involved and you get to do college, you get to do NFL. But I also like the fact that it's so easy. You just do higher or lower, higher amount of yards, lower amount of yards. It's a very simple concept. And for those of you who may not be big into sports betting or anything like that, fantasy football is the thing for you. And so you need to go over to this app. It's a great alternative to it. And it makes it so much easier to deal with as well. And if you go to the website at underdogfantasy.com, you just check it out and you can see it for yourself. You can have all these different players. You can do rivals against each other. You can pick between 2 and 5 players across any team, and you get to decide whether they finish higher or lower on their stats. It's one of the easiest fantasy games to play out there, and you win cold hard cash in each and every game. So sign up for promo code Locked On, all one word, just Locked On, and Underdog will double your deposit for up to $100 on your first time. Deposit $100, you get $100 for free. It's as simple as that. Go to underdogfantasy.com or find the Underdog Fantasy app in the App Store, Google Play Store. And remember, that's Underdog Fantasy, promo code Locked On, all one word. Get in on the college football pick'em action today with Underdog Fantasy.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, so moving on to the defensive side of the ball, as we all know that this is probably the more fascinating part of the Razorback team because it's got one great element and it's got one bad element. We all know what it is. Like you don't have to hear me tell you all the time. They're great at getting to the quarterback. They're great at stopping the run. They're great at getting sacks, but they are not good in the secondary. Luckily, Texas A&M has such an anemic offense that it didn't cost you too much in the game against them because you held them to 17 points. Texas A&M wasn't enough because of that. We don't need to go that. But my point is that your defensive numbers were better against A&M because A&M's offense was not good. Well, can't say that against Alabama because Alabama has a guy named Bryce Young. I don't know if you've heard of him. He won the Heisman Trophy last year, and he's completing close to 70% of his passes while throwing for over 1,000 yards with 13 touchdowns and only 2 interceptions. So, he's been pretty good, and they're scoring 48 points a game. Alabama scoring 48 points a game. Arkansas is scoring 34, and that's pretty good. But Alabama is averaging nearly 7 touchdowns a game. Now, you got to put it all into perspective as well, though. Alabama played Utah State, UL Monroe, and Vanderbilt at home. Those are their 3 games that were at home, and they smoked all those opponents 55-0, 63-7, 53-5-3, respectively. The one true road game and the better team that they played this year in Texas, it's 20-19 was the final score. So I don't want to just sit here and say that, this is going to be a game where Alabama's defense or offense struggles against Arkansas's defense because of they haven't, the other teams that haven't played, they haven't been very good. But there is an element to that. Let's be honest, because playing on the road is huge, because we know what the stats get thrown around about Alabama. We know that's a big deal. We know that Arkansas presumably is a better team than those 3 blowouts that Alabama had at home. And I think Arkansas is a much, 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 much better team than Texas. And so if you're able to just keep this in a reasonable scoring situation with the Razorback defense, you'll be fine. Because it's a lot to ask. I get it. But because Nick Saban's a great coach. The best coach, the greatest coach of all time. And he sees Arkansas's weakness. He knows what Arkansas's defensive weakness is. So guess what he's going to do? He's going to exploit that weakness. He's going to throw the ball. He's going to throw the ball a lot. He's going to try to get it out in space. He's going to try to go quick. I know that they'll run the ball, and Arkansas will, have to deal with that. But Nick Saban knows weaknesses. So it's a matter of, in this game, if you want to be able to just keep it reasonable and keep it in there, like where you're going into the fourth quarter, you're still in the game. One, it does not need to be a shutout. It can't be a shootout. Excuse me. It can't be a shootout. I just think that's a recipe for disaster for Arkansas. And of course, I don't know. Maybe that's a good thing. Like if it ends up being a shootout, maybe it's not so bad for Arkansas against Alabama. I don't think there's any way. It's like he'll just take it however it goes. But in fact, I'm glad that I'm changing my mind on this. If you think about Alabama in the past, like a lot of games that they've lost have always kind of come to shootouts. Like last year's A&M game they lost was like 42-38, I think was the final score. It was a pretty high scoring game for all things considered. Arkansas was a quote unquote shootout last year, 42-35. So that was a high scoring game. So maybe a shootout is what Arkansas needs to be. But I don't want to trust that. I don't want to get to that point because I think Alabama's defense is much more improved. But still, defensively, you're going to have to get pressure on Bryce Young if you want to have any sort of success. You got to get to the quarterback. You got to get to him. You got to get to him quick, early, and often. And you got to just make him uncomfortable. That's the key. And I know it's easier said than done, but that's what you have to do. Alabama's got great wide receivers. They got a great quarterback, and they got a solid offensive line that is vulnerable, but still solid nonetheless. So can you draw up some great blitz packages? Can you get Drew Sanders to come on the outside and cause some problems? Can you get the guys like Jordan Dominic to really cause some problems there? Because if you're able to get pressure, it comes down to this. Can you get pressure and can you stop the run? You're not going to be stopping the pass effectively. You're just not. You're not built that way. But if you can just pressure the quarterback, slow down the run, keep the score reasonable, get Alabama to punt, get Alabama to settle for field goals at times. Keep them out of the end zone just where it's not every play. Like, you don't want your first 4 possessions for Bama to be 4 touchdowns. You do that, you're not going to win. You're not going to win. But can you just slow them down enough? Let your offense be able to be put in a position where every time they step on the field, they have a chance to either tie it, take the lead, or at least be within striking distance. That's all you got to do. That's all this defense needs to do. I don't care if they give up 400 yards passing. Like, I don't care as long as they just do a good job of keeping them out of the end zone, because that's another thing too, folks. The passing yardage for Arkansas is extremely high that they give up on defense. But if you look at that in comparison to, say, how many passing touchdowns they give up, it's pretty weird. They don't give up a lot of passing touchdowns. They just give up a lot of passing yards. Maybe that's because they get to the goal line and they punch it in, whatever it is. But still, you just got to slow them down. You don't got to be perfect. You just got to slow them down enough. But can they? Will they? I don't think so. I don't think so. I think Arkansas will do a good job of getting to Bryce Young. I think they'll do a good job of slowing down the run. But I just think that at the end of the day, it's just going to be Alabama just picking apart Arkansas secondary. They're just too good of a team. They're too well coached. Like, if Arkansas can hold Bryce Young, and I'm serious about this, if they can hold Bryce Young to under 300 yards, that's a victory. That's a huge victory. That means you did some good stuff. Or, yes, that probably means they rush for like 200 yards. But how about this? Total yardage, if you can hold them under 400 yards, wins. The big victory there for defense if you can hold them under 400 yards. But I don't know. I don't think you can. I think that's going to be problematic. I think Alabama's going to exploit it. I think Alabama's going to really take advantage of it and have some big plays. It's going to end up costing Arkansas some yardage there too. So part of defense, though, I'll also talk about special teams and maybe some intangibles. But, okay, here's the thing. I'm not coming down on anybody. But Max Fletcher, he's got to start punting better. Punting has not been great. I think he's averaging 37 yards a punt. You got to be better. I know they go for hang time with him, but you got to be a little bit more consistent there. And Cam Little, got to make the easy ones. If it's 45 yards or closer, you have to make them. Even if it's 50 yards, you have to make them. You have to get all the points you possibly can. So Cam is going to be counted on in this game. He's going to have to make them. He's going to have to bounce back. It's going to have to happen this game. But besides that, it's just, I think they'll be okay. Special teams wise, I think they'll be okay. They're just going to have to be better than what they've seen. We'll get into our final predictions coming up next here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Stay with us.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, final segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. It's final predictions. And I've been thinking about this a lot. I've been having a lot of Razorback fans call in on my radio show. I've had a lot of Razorback fans tweet at me. And I've had a lot of Razorback fans say that they think this is going to happen. They think that's going to happen. And I've gone back and forth. Sometimes it's really hard because I'm going to be honest. Like, you all know, I'm a fan. I'm a Razorback fan. I'm wearing a Razorback shirt. It's a pretty sweet one, too, from Alumni Hall. Go check them out. It's just, I love the Razorbacks, and I always want to root for them, and I always will root for them. I'm going to be there in the stands in the north end zone for this game, and I really, 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 really want them to win. I think everybody kind of knows that, knows how I approach it and how I feel about it and everything. So there's no like running from it or trying to be justifying my fandom or, whatever, fanboy, however you want to call it. But that being said, I also try to be realistic about things as much as possible. I try to go with my gut feeling. Some people made fun of me last year because I picked Arkansas to finish third in the West, and they said I was a homer, but then Arkansas actually ended up being third in the West. And it wasn't because I was being a homer. It's because I honestly believe that they were the third best team in the SEC West. I picked Arkansas second in the SEC this past year, and people called me a homer and everything. Well, I mean, I still believe Arkansas is the second best team in the SEC West right now. And I don't even know if there's even an argument. I know they lost to A&M, but I still think they're the second best. Guess we'll find out. But the point is I try to be realistic when it comes to the big things. And I'm going to be realistic with all of you. It's been 15 years since Arkansas last beat Alabama. It's been a long time. And I do believe that this is Arkansas's best chance of beating Alabama that they've had in quite some time. Maybe since 2014. This is their best chance, their best opportunity to win. But I just don't think it's going to happen. I hate to say it that way, but I just don't think Arkansas is going to beat Alabama. And I hope I'm wrong. Like I will scream and eat crow and tell everybody that hey, I was an idiot and I said I was wrong. And if you pick Arkansas to win, I don't think you're an idiot. Like I don't think you're dumb for doing that. I just believe until you beat Alabama, you're not going to beat Alabama. I can't pick you to do it. They're really good. They're Nick Saban coach team. They got the Heisman Trophy winner. They have arguably the best player on the defense side of the ball in the entire country. It's a lot. It's a lot to overcome. And in order for Arkansas to win this game, they're going to have to play as the best game they ever have under Sam Pittman. And Alabama's going to have to not play their best. Do I think you'll be close? Do I think it'll be a game? I do. In fact, if you were a betting person, I'd take Arkansas on the point. 17 plus 17, I'm taking Arkansas. But I just think it's too much. I think it's too much for Arkansas to win this game. And there's no shame in it. There's no shame in losing to Alabama. It'll be stinky because you have 2 straight losses, both in the SEC West. So that would be stinky. But I just don't think it's going to happen. It'll be close. It'll be a game. Into the fourth quarter, it'll still be in doubt. But I have Arkansas losing this game by a final score of, I've been going back and forth on this, by the way. They're going to lose this game by a final score of 31-23. I think that Arkansas loses by 8. I think that they're able to keep it into the game, but I think Alabama scores a go-ahead touchdown that keeps it out of reach, and Arkansas just can't find the end zone once again. So, again, hope I'm wrong. I really hope I'm wrong. I really do. I will, everybody can say how wrong I was, and you can tag me in freezing cold takes or whatever. I'll take it. I'll be so happy for it. But I just don't think this is the game, folks. I'm sorry. But hey, it's still going to be a great Saturday, right? Appreciate everybody listening in to the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at BuzzJohnNabors for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have. We'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody.